I decided to surprise my husband at work with his favorite lunch. He had recently become the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the city, and between endless meetings and business trips, we barely had time together anymore. I figured showing up with fresh pasta from his favorite Italian restaurant might brighten his day. As soon as I stepped into the lobby, a security guard stopped me. "Authorized personnel only, ma'am." I smiled. "I'm here to see my husband, Nolan Hart. He's the CEO." The guard looked at me for a second, then laughed. "Good one." "I'm serious." She shook her head. "Ma'am, I see Mr. Hart's wife here almost every day." Before I could answer, she pointed toward the elevators. "There she is now." A woman in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit walked through the lobby with the confidence of someone who belonged there. She looked polished, successful, and completely at ease. The guard smiled at her. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hart. Your husband's still in his meeting. He should be finished in about 20 minutes." The woman gave a familiar nod and headed toward the elevators without even looking in my direction. I stood frozen, still holding the takeout bag. For a moment, it felt as if my heart had simply forgotten how to beat. I'd been married to Nolan for 28 years. Apparently, someone else had been his wife at work. Every instinct told me to walk over, stop her, demand an explanation, and expose whatever game she was playing. But something about the guard's certainty stopped me. She wasn't guessing. She genuinely believed that woman was Nolan's wife, which meant everyone else in the building probably believed it too. I forced a smile. "I think I've mixed up the buildings," I said. "I'm actually looking for another company." The guard frowned. "I thought you said you were Mr. Hart's wife." "I meant a family friend. Long day." I let out an awkward laugh and placed the food on the reception desk. "Could you give this to Nolan? Just tell him Cora stopped by." "No problem." I thanked her and walked outside before my legs gave out beneath me. I sat in my car for several minutes without turning the engine on. Nothing made sense. Nolan and I had met when we were both 23. He was finishing business school while I had just started my career as an accountant. He dreamed big. I kept both feet on the ground. While he chased promotions, I managed our finances, paid the bills, organized our life, and made sure we always had stability. He used to tell everyone the same thing. "I can take risks because Cora gives me something solid to come home to." I believed every word. Over the years, he climbed the corporate ladder faster than anyone expected. Director, vice president, then CEO. Watching him succeed had always made me proud. I never complained about the late nights, canceled vacations, or business trips that stole weekends from us. I told myself that supporting someone's dream was part of loving them. We never had children. Nolan had always insisted that a family would slow his career down. It hurt at first. Eventually, I accepted it. His company became the life we built together. Or at least that's what I believed until that afternoon. I couldn't bring myself to go home. The house I'd spent the morning cleaning suddenly felt unfamiliar. Dinner was already waiting in the refrigerator. I'd even bought anniversary tickets as a surprise for next month. Now all I could think about was the woman the security guard had confidently called my husband's wife. Instead, I drove to a small coffee shop a few blocks away. I ordered coffee that went cold in front of me while I replayed every second at the office over and over again. At 6:47, my phone buzzed. "Working late again. Don't wait up. Love you." I stared at those two words. Love you. Did he? Or had I simply become the safe, dependable woman who kept his real life running while someone else enjoyed the exciting parts? I finally replied, "Okay, there's lasagna in the fridge." A few seconds later, his answer appeared. "You're the best. See you tonight." That sentence hurt more than I expected, because if there was one thing I had always been, it was dependable. Nolan didn't get home until almost 11:30. I was sitting in the living room with an open book I'd been pretending to read for nearly 3 hours. He looked exhausted. His tie was loose, his hair slightly messy, and when he leaned down to kiss my forehead, I caught the faint scent of a perfume that definitely wasn't mine. "How was your day?" I asked. "Non-stop meetings," he sighed. "Board presentation. Then I had to stay late with Vanessa to go over next quarter's numbers." Vanessa. So that was her name now. He headed toward the kitchen. "Did you really make lasagna?" "It's in the fridge." A minute later, he returned with a steaming plate and smiled exactly the way he always had. You saved my life. I watched him eat, watched him laugh, watched him act exactly like the man I trusted for nearly 3 decades. Then I spoke as casually as I could. I actually stopped by your office today. For the first time all evening, he paused, only for a second. But after 28 years together, 1 second was enough. You did? I brought lunch. His expression stayed calm. I never got it. I left it with the woman at reception. I figured your wife would make sure you received it. He blinked. My wife? The woman everyone seems to know. He recovered almost instantly. Oh, you mean Vanessa? She probably got busy. He smiled again. Things were crazy today, I smiled back. So I noticed. That night I waited until Nolan fell asleep. He had always been one of those people who could close his eyes and disappear into a deep sleep within minutes. I couldn't. My mind replayed the scene in the lobby over and over. The guard's laugh, the confident woman, the words, I see his wife here every day. Around midnight, I walked quietly into Nolan's home office. His laptop sat on the desk, unlocked. He'd never hidden his password from me. It was still our wedding date. My hands trembled as I opened his calendar. At first, everything looked ordinary. Board meetings, investor calls, client dinners, business trips. Then I noticed a pattern. Private dinners with Vanessa at restaurants that no one would mistake for business meetings. Luxury weekend retreats. Resort reservations. The same name appeared again and again. Sometimes hidden behind initials, sometimes written openly. Curious, I checked the expense records. Most charges were filed as corporate travel, but the dates lined up perfectly with those dinners. The deeper I looked, the harder it became to convince myself there was an innocent explanation. For almost 3 years, every important trip somehow included Vanessa. Every conference, every retreat, every overnight stay. I closed the laptop and stood in the bedroom doorway, watching Nolan sleep peacefully. For 28 years, I'd never questioned him. Not once. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in years. As soon as Nolan left for work, I searched the house. Desk drawers, file cabinets, closets, old storage boxes. I wasn't even sure what I expected to find. Then, inside a forgotten watch box, I discovered a single silver key attached to a small plastic tag. Harborview Residences, apartment 214. The address was less than 20 minutes away. I drove there immediately. The building was expensive enough to have private underground parking. When I entered the garage, I recognized a black Mercedes parked in space 2114. I'd seen it outside Nolan's office more than once. I took the elevator to the second floor. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it. The key slid smoothly into the lock. The door opened. It wasn't an apartment someone occasionally borrowed. It was a home. Fresh flowers sat on the dining table. 2 coffee mugs rested beside the sink. A jacket I had bought Nolan for Christmas hung near the entrance. The air smelled exactly like his cologne. Every room carried evidence of a shared life. Photographs lined the shelves. Nolan and Vanessa on a beach, at a mountain resort, laughing over dinner. In every picture, his wedding ring was gone. The bedroom hurt the most. His clothes filled half the closet. His shoes stood neatly beside hers. No overnight bag, no suitcase. He lived here. Maybe not every night, but often enough that it had become another home. On the dresser lay a folder, future plans. I opened it. Inside were brochures for houses they wanted to buy together, travel plans, vacation ideas, and beneath them, consultation notes from several divorce attorneys. Every page felt colder than the last. There were timelines, strategies, lists of arguments, even notes describing me as emotionally distant, unambitious, and unsupportive. Ordinary disagreements from our marriage had been rewritten into evidence against me. He hadn't simply fallen in love with someone else. He had been preparing my replacement. Carefully, patiently, for years. I photographed every page, every receipt, every picture, every document. When I finally left the apartment, I no longer felt shocked, just empty. My phone started ringing before I reached the parking lot. Nolan. I ignored it. He called again, then again. Several text messages followed. Where are you? Are you okay? Please answer. Hours later, I finally listened to the voicemails. His concern sounded completely genuine. He even said he was about to call hospitals. For a moment, I almost believed him. Then I remembered the photographs still sitting in my phone. I called him back. He answered before the first ring finished. Thank God, I was worried sick. I just needed some air. You scared me. I'm fine. I'm leaving work early. He said. I'll pick up Thai food. Your favorite. My favorite. He still remembered everything I liked. He just didn't want to spend his life with me anymore. That sounds nice, I replied. When I hung up, I stared through the windshield for several minutes before starting the engine. For the first time since we'd met, I wasn't driving home to my husband. I was driving back to a stranger. That evening, we ate Thai food across from each other like nothing had changed. Nolan talked about difficult clients, board meetings, and another exhausting day at the office. I nodded in all the right places, smiled when I was supposed to, asked the questions a supportive wife would ask, all the while knowing that, according to the papers I'd found, he intended to end our marriage within months. After dinner, he suggested we watch a movie. We settled onto the couch the way we had hundreds of times before. His head rested against my shoulder, his hand found mine. If I hadn't opened that apartment door earlier that day, I would have believed every second of it. Halfway through the movie, he muted the television. Cora? Yeah? Are we okay? I looked at him. What do you mean? You've seemed distant. The word hit me harder than he could possibly know. Distant. I'd read it in the notes he'd prepared for his divorce attorneys. One more flaw he planned to use against me. I'm just tired, I answered. He squeezed my hand. If something's wrong, you can tell me. I know. A few minutes later, he was watching the movie again as if nothing had happened. I barely remembered what we watched. I spent the entire night thinking. By morning, I wasn't trying to understand anymore. I was gathering evidence. The moment Nolan left for work, I opened every financial account we shared. Accounting had been my profession for more than 2 decades. Numbers rarely lied. People did. Our salaries had always gone into the same household accounts. After paying the mortgage, insurance, utilities, groceries, and everything else, we should have accumulated a substantial amount in savings. Instead, the balance was dramatically lower than it should have been. The missing money hadn't disappeared. It had been redirected. Apartment rent, luxury furniture, designer stores, weekend trips, restaurants, plane tickets. 3 years of expenses supporting an entirely separate life. A life financed with money that belonged to both of us. While I'd been driving the same old car and telling myself we were saving for retirement, Nolan had been paying for another home, another relationship, another future. I downloaded every bank statement I could access, every credit card record, every transfer, every receipt. Then I turned my attention to Meridian Technologies. Public corporate filings are available if you know where to look, and I knew exactly where to look. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but after comparing quarterly reports with internal timelines from Nolan's calendar, another pattern emerged. Resources had quietly been shifted toward Vanessa's division. Large clients were reassigned, budgets increased, projects accelerated. Everything pointed in one direction. He wasn't simply helping a talented executive. He was positioning her for the highest operational role in the company. Several decisions appeared difficult to justify from a business perspective. They made far more sense if viewed through the lens of a personal relationship. I organized everything into folders: personal finances, apartment expenses, corporate decisions, timeline, photographs. By late afternoon, the entire story fit together like pieces of a puzzle. Only one person outside the company had the authority to stop what was happening. The chairman of the board. I'd met Richard Callahan only twice over the years. He probably barely remembered me. Still, I called. This is Cora Hart, Nolan's wife. Of course. Is everything all right? No. A brief silence followed. I believe there are serious corporate issues you need to see. What kind of issues? The kind that shouldn't be discussed over the phone. Another pause. Then he spoke quietly. When can we meet? Today. I'll be there in 2 hours. When Richard arrived, I walked him through everything from the beginning. The lobby, the apartment, the photographs, the financial records, the restructuring. He barely interrupted. The farther we went, the darker his expression became. When I finished, he leaned back in silence. Finally, he rubbed both hands across his face. My God, you understand why I called. I do. He looked down at the documents again. If this is accurate, and it appears to be, we have a very serious problem. It is accurate? He nodded slowly. I'm calling an emergency board meeting immediately. He copied the files onto his encrypted drive before standing to leave. At the door, he turned back toward me. I'm truly sorry for what you've discovered. I managed a tired smile. So am I. Nolan came home earlier than usual. The second he stepped through the front door, I knew Richard had already spoken to the board. His face was pale. His jaw was clenched. He didn't even bother taking off his coat. You went to Richard. It wasn't a question. I calmly stirred the vegetables in the skillet. I shared information the board deserved to know. He stared at me in disbelief. You had no right to go through my private files. I finally turned to face him. Private? The apartment you paid for with our money? The divorce strategy you wrote while kissing me goodnight every evening? The corporate decisions that benefited the woman you were sleeping with? His expression shifted. For the first time since all of this began, he looked afraid. What do you want? He asked quietly. I shook my head. You still don't understand. I don't want anything. I want the truth to stop hiding. He sank into one of the kitchen chairs. I pulled out my phone and opened the photographs from the apartment, the house listings, the vacation plans, the divorce notes, the timeline. His eyes dropped to the screen. Then he covered his face with both hands. You found it. I found your second life. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, I'm sorry. The words sounded hollow. I never wanted it to happen this way. I couldn't help laughing. Really? How exactly did you imagine it? You file for divorce. You blame me for growing distant. You marry Vanessa 6 months later. And somehow I'm supposed to believe none of this was planned? He didn't answer. Because we both knew it had been. For years. I took a slow breath. 28 years, Nolan. I supported every promotion, every business trip, every sacrifice. I gave up having children because you said your career had to come first. I believed we were building one future together. His eyes filled with tears. Instead of feeling satisfaction, I felt tired, completely exhausted. He reached toward me. I still love you. I stepped back before he could touch my hand. No, you loved having someone who made your life easier. There's a difference. His shoulders collapsed. I made a terrible mistake. It wasn't one mistake. It was thousands of choices. The apartment, the lies, the money, the documents, the plans. You chose them over me every single day. Silence filled the kitchen. Finally, I turned off the stove. I'm leaving. He looked up immediately. Where? A hotel. Please. My attorney will contact yours. His voice cracked. We can fix this. I picked up my car keys. You started ending this marriage years ago. I'm simply refusing to be the last person who realizes it. I walked out without looking back. The divorce paperwork was filed the following Monday. My attorney barely needed an hour to understand what had happened. Between the financial records, the apartment, the photographs, and Nolan's own written plans, the evidence spoke for itself. That same afternoon, Richard called. The board meeting is over. I held my breath. Vanessa has been terminated. Nolan has been removed from day-to-day control of the company, pending a full investigation. We've hired independent forensic accountants. If the records confirm everything you've shown us... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I already knew where the evidence would lead. Nolan called me that evening. I answered after the third ring. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he finally broke the silence. You've destroyed everything. His voice sounded exhausted. The board is investigating me. Vanessa lost her job. My career is probably over. I closed my eyes. You spent 3 years building another life while I was still building ours. And somehow you think I'm the one who destroyed it? I was going to tell you. When? After the divorce? After you married Vanessa? He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I know about the apartment. I know about the lawyers. I know about the money. I know about the plans. I know all of it. His breathing became uneven. Cora, please. I'll end things with Vanessa. We'll go to counseling. We can fix this. The words barely registered. He wasn't calling because he'd suddenly realized what he'd done. He was calling because everything he'd built was collapsing. You already chose her. I simply refused to keep paying the price for that choice. I never stopped loving you. No, you stopped respecting me. And once respect disappears, love doesn't survive for long. He started crying. Real tears. Not angry. Not defensive. Just broken. For a brief moment, I remembered the young man I'd fallen in love with 28 years earlier. The one who promised we'd grow old together. The one who held my hand when we couldn't afford our first apartment. The one who used to tell everyone I was the best decision he'd ever made. Somewhere along the way, that man disappeared. Maybe slowly, maybe years ago. I don't even know exactly when. I can't lose you, you already did. I was just the last person to find out. He whispered my name again. I ended the call before he could say anything else. Then I blocked his number. The divorce moved much faster than I expected. Once Nolan realized how much evidence existed, fighting every issue became impossible. The apartment, the financial records, the documented plans, everything supported the same story. In the final settlement, I kept the house. The money he'd secretly spent over the years was accounted for during the property division instead of simply disappearing. Meanwhile, the board completed its internal investigation. Richard called me one final time. The audit confirmed your findings. Nolan officially resigned. There won't be a severance package. The company is reviewing additional legal options. I thanked him quietly. When we hung up, I sat alone in my living room for a long time. The silence no longer felt frightening. It felt peaceful. Months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Nolan and Vanessa had ended their relationship shortly after everything fell apart. Without the company, without the promotions, without the future they'd planned, their relationship didn't survive either. I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't sad. I simply realized something important. For years, I'd believed I was the ordinary one, the dependable wife, the woman behind the scenes. But in the end, the one thing Nolan underestimated was the person who had managed our entire life from the beginning. He thought I wouldn't notice. He forgot what accountants do. We follow the numbers, and eventually, the numbers always tell the truth.